Coruscant, one-handed scoop and run. He caught them napping. Oh, he's too good. He's just too good. Played it to Staines. It comes to Galvin now. And through Papali'i, then Coruscant. Numbers right here. Mason joining in. A chance for the Tigers. Mason surging. I think he slid over. I think he slid onto the try line.
He goes to 12. There's Latu.
Oh, what a pass to a rampaging Seyfarth. Untouched. The Tigers are about to take the lead. At the southern end of Leichhardt. Coruscant. Sweeping pass. Galvin tries to kick it through. No, I reckon he might be a 5-6 more. They don't need any more than one. It's a try to Fainu.
Staines tackled on 5. Mason, Galvin, kicking wide and flat.
Oh, it's bounced awkwardly, but it's bounced for the Tigers.
Oh.
Galvin, he's been wonderful. The pass to Papali'i. They still haven't stopped him. The offload. Fainu. Samuela Fainu has made a surety of it. What a way to end a brilliant performance by the West Tigers. And for a club that has lurched in the doldrums for many, many seasons, rest assured, Tiger fans, there are brighter times ahead.
It's the West Tigers podcast, episode number 356, and oh boy, it's not just one post-victory edition of the West Tigers podcast, but two in a row, which is really, really fantastic. And when you're talking about a club that had won up until a couple of weeks ago, 12 games in 3 years, it's definitely something to celebrate. Gary's here, Steve's here, and Declan is here. So good to see Steve and Declan back on board. And we're going to start with one word to describe that big 34 points to 26 victory over Manly at Leichhardt Oval. And we'll start with Steve. Hello, Steve. Long time no see.
Hey, Joel. Yeah, hey, everyone. It's fantastic to be back, especially after a couple of wins. So my one word is, and you've got to listen carefully in this G-rated podcast, but my one word is ruck. I just think we won the ruck last night, and our forwards all ran over 100 metres, and we had fast play, the ball speed, and we did have a little bit, if not a lot of luck. But my word is ruck. We won it.
Luck rhymes with ruck. And, you could see Manly's strategy was to try and hold us down and to try and dominate around that area, and credit to the referee, he wasn't taking too much of it, although they were offside a fair bit and they did push it as much as they possibly could until they got that one sin binning. I like it, Steve. Thank you. Declan's back from searching for the Loch Ness Monster. Any progress on that at all, Declan?
No, I can't say I made any progress on that. I did run into John Bateman, though,
right,
in England. That was kind of awkward. I think that Eddie accused me of having the same morals as him by not being on the pod when I was overseas, so I didn't really appreciate that. But yeah, it's great to be back, and I think that, especially in time for a win at Leichhardt, I think I've timed it perfectly, to be honest. But I think my one word is momentum this game, because Manly just started so red hot, and I think we were all kind of thinking, oh god, this might be a long one, and then that Appy try just completely swung it in our way, and then we went on with it, and then it was that way pretty much until I think Latu Fainu knocked on the ball, and then they kind of swung back, and we just did so well just to hang on. I'm not sure if it was just one more set or one more minute in the game. I'm not sure we would have been able to hang on, but credit to the boys, because that was an impressive defensive effort at the end.
That Latu Fainu poor play the ball certainly had me worried, yes, and you're absolutely right. I think West Tigers teams of the past would have capitulated for sure. You didn't appear on any other West Tigers podcasts at all, and put it up on Facebook. Good to be on a good West Tigers podcast for a change. Like channeling your inner John Bateman.
No, we're not very well liked with the other West Tigers podcasts. I don't think I would have gotten invited. So, except Gary, obviously. Gary likes to switch to rivals, but yeah.
The highly sought after Gary. Hello, Gary. One word, please.
For me, I'm going to go with 19, and I've spoken about the youth a lot through this season, Api Coruscant last night was playing with three 19-year-olds in the spine. And during that second half anyway, Caesar did start there. But the back end of that game was three 19-year-olds in the spine with Api. And I thought, for me, they were the standouts. Like, all season, the standouts have been our young guys. And we had another one come in last night and show that he's quite possibly an NRL half with that great ball he threw for the safe half try in Fainu. I thought he was fantastic last night, and I want to talk a little bit later about that try he did set up, because it was amazing work from multiple players to score that try.
Am I being too optimistic, guys, in saying that Leichhardt Fainu has arrived last night? Like, we've sort of been waiting all year. He's had a hard year with injury and in and out, not really getting much of an opportunity to show what he's got. But, gee, last night, as you just said, Gary, some of the stuff he did was pretty special.
Well, they said on the commentary that he'd actually ripped the hamstring off the bone. So a lot of us had thought it was a relatively minor hamstring injury, but it's a pretty significant injury. And some of us had sort of made some judgments over Latu's ability or inability based on how he's performed this year with those hamstring issues. But if you take that into account, the class certainly appears to be there. And again, it only comes back to what was being discussed last week, Gary, which is there's one too many players, you'd think, in this spine, or maybe two if with Heath Mason putting his hand up.
Yeah, most definitely. That's my big concern moving into next year is what do you do with Leichhardt Fainu? I think it's really important, as I said last week, that he's really engaged in that NRL first grade side. I don't have a bench spot for him because I think you got to keep Talon De Silva just as engaged, and I think he's probably should be in that 14 role. So finding a spot for Latu somewhere over this off-season is going to be really important, because I don't know that we can afford to have him playing reserve grade for most of next season.
Yeah, I think the good thing about this situation is that I think it will work itself out organically, because like we all know with Lachlan Galvin's contract situation, we've all kind of talked about it a lot, and I think everyone's a little bit worried that he's not going to re-sign. And it's good to know that we have someone like Leichhardt Fainu who does have that quality there. And then, I think Galvin is the better prospect, so if we re-sign him, then I'm all right with losing Fainu. But yeah, I think that it's good because Fainu's on that 4-year contract, so he's locked up longer than Galvin, so we don't really need to worry about him leaving anytime soon. So we can kind of stash him and use him as the insurance policy in case Galvin does end up leaving.
So that's my main point, though. He is our insurance policy if Galvin leaves. And yes, you can stash him in reserve grade, but you want him happy. If he's going to be our 5/8, because Galvin's still got 2 years to go after this year in his contract. If we're stashing Leichhardt Fainu for the next 2 years, how happy is he going to be with his position in the club if he then becomes that half? So I think it's really important to keep him engaged in that NRL side in some way, because you don't want a guy that you're just stashing there as your backup policy, knowing that he's just your backup policy. It's actually something that needs to be managed really well, because it is very possible in a couple of years Leichhardt Fainu is our number 6 because Lachie Galvin has moved elsewhere.
But I think with the November 1 thing, I think that kind of makes it a lot clearer. So if Galvin at midway point of next year still isn't re-signed, and there's not much traction in that area, do we then prioritize someone like Fainu? Because we're not too positive that we can keep someone like Galvin. I don't know. It's something interesting to consider. But yeah, I just hope we can keep Galvin, because I think he just proved again last night that he's just got what it takes to be a special player in this competition.
Yeah, I think the emphasis from the club and the football side of the club really needs to be on performing next year, as opposed to worrying about who's going to leave the club if we don't perform. We've got an opportunity next year with these young guys and a sprinkling of experience and hopefully some more experience coming, of actually climbing up the ladder. next year and engaging with these young guys and showing them and proving to them that West Tigers is a club that's worth being at. And I think that's where our focus has got to be. And I suppose my point around that is I've never really agreed with that philosophy that comes around at State of Origin time where it says you pick your best 17 and just find a position for them, because you end up with 5 fullbacks in the team and playing all sorts of positions. But I've got to say, in this situation coming into next year, I think in our club we've got to pick our best 17 and find spots. I get the argument, and it will be an argument, that Fainu might be too young and not developed enough to play lock. But if he's in our best 17, maybe that's a spot for him for next year. And our focus has got to be keeping them all. It's no good letting half these young guys go, especially the good ones.
Mm. And the big thing with Galvin is you can see how much he likes winning. You have a look at those interviews with him after the game, the big smile on his face as soon as we won that game. If we can get off to a winning start next year, I think that goes a long way to increasing your chances of re-signing him long term. He looked really happy last night. The entire side looked really happy last night, which I think is a big change from what we've seen throughout the year. You have a look at when Seyfarth went over for that try, the way Appy was carrying on after that try was scored, and the number of times he was laughing and smiling last night. While we've been playing our football for most of this second half of the season, it's been really dour, and the players have almost looked like they'd wanted to be anywhere else in the world. Last night didn't look like that. They looked like they were having a lot of fun out there, and they looked really engaged with each other, which is not something we've seen in this second part of the season.
Yeah, you've stolen my thunder, Gary. I was going to talk about that and make some comparisons with Penrith. But let's go through the one-word submissions from the West Tigers podcast forum, and this will circle back to that point. Mac Tiger's word was proud. That's a good one. We should be proud of that effort for sure. Tigersman's word was never confident until the final siren, but his word was inspirational. Daniel 67's word was promise, so the promise of a better future. Tiger Tun's word was transforming. We're transforming for the better. Mike's word was happy with the direction that the team is going. Chris's word was euphoric. The win, the effort, the good discipline, the car horns down Mary Street and Balmain Road. Euphoric. Good one. Forever Night, the one-word submission on the West Tigers podcast forum was exciting, and that is the future is. Dirty Red's word was also euphoria. Canberra Tiger, effort. Natmac 78, smile. Logan R21, we wanted it more. Condensed into one word, cheating, but that's okay, acceptable. Tiger Tone SFS word was satisfied. Any Given Sunday, heartening. A great night for the souls of everyone at West Tigers. Rach09, Fainu. Thanks, Manly. We're honoured to have them. Russ Study 63, beginning. This is the beginning. Cade 79, Mason. Leave him at fullback. Tiger 5150, karma was the one word. We got some good ref calls for a change. Flantastic is new to the West Tigers podcast forum. Welcome, Flantastic. Keep your one-word submissions coming through. Magic. There was some pixie dust in the air out there last night. Barra's word was ownership. Everyone owned their mistakes and made up for it with extra effort. Lorenzo's word was fun. The players looked like they were enjoying playing. And it's one of those funny things, isn't it, that just on that point, Gary, that you're making, is it a team that is combined, that is of one, that is having fun, that's enjoying each other, that isn't pulling in different directions, is a better football team. But we've been waiting for a couple of things to go our way. We've knocked off South, we've knocked off Manly, a lot of similarities in those two games. Held on, in the last couple of minutes we could have lost. I think they're big I'm not saying turning points, but I think they're definitely the things that we needed to have happen to bring this group together as the season comes to an end. If we'd just spluttered to the end of the year, I think we're a bit of a disadvantage as to where we are now.
Yeah, I think these last two games have been really important. Getting that sense of joy and going in the right direction back around the club heading into the off-season is really important. And the mood of the players really surprised me last night. I know I mentioned it briefly earlier, but that they were really playing for each other at the start of the year, I thought. And then there was a little bit of the news about Richo going off to England and all the talk around us shipping players out of the club and Bateman leaving. And the season getting harder and longer and more difficult as it went on. Whatever Benji's done in the last 2 weeks to kind of bring the players together and get them in that mood he's got them in now, he's got to be commended for that, because I didn't think we were going to see a football team playing for each other the way they have in the last 2 weeks, and last night especially, and the way they celebrated together as well.
Yeah, I don't think that point can be lost that you just made then about Benji Marshall, because, there's been a lot of criticism thrown his way, and perhaps fair enough. But you don't come back from 16-0 against Manly, albeit that they didn't really turn up. You don't come back 16-0 against them unless you are together and playing for each other and a united squad. So Benji Marshall and the coaching group have obviously done that. And although a lot went our way and Manly didn't turn up and South didn't turn up, you've got to take all that into account. You've got to say our attack is now looking dangerous. We look like we can score 20-odd points a game. Our defence is still very brittle. It was much better at the beginning of the year.
It was terrible. That first 15 to 20 minutes, that defence was disgusting.
Yeah, and it was. It was edges and middle, right? But at the end of the day, and I know stats don't tell the whole picture, but we only missed 20 tackles. Now, against South, there was so much arm grabbing, it was ridiculous, right? But the point I'm trying to make is, I think, for me, I'm confident Benji's starting to do the job that we were sort of hoping that he could do. I think, he's proved before that he's a champion as a player. And I think he's growing into the role of coach, and I'm quite happy for him to be continuing into next year, and I know some aren't. It's just my opinion.
Talking about that attack that you just raised there, Steve, the really pleasing thing for me is the development of Lachie Galvin's game over the last month. He's had a really strong season, but a lot of the season he was relying on a little bit of a show and go, his ability to beat a tackle, and the short ball to Sam Fainu. The last couple of weeks, he's actually pulled out a face ball where he's hitting the centres. That short ball that he's used a number of times, he used it last week to set up both Lilly's try and Adam Dewey's try. He was using it a number of times again last night. And his ability, Manly targeted him last night. If you watch back that game, you have a look at how every time the ball was coming to him, the Manly centre was driving in and trying to get to him right as he was catching the ball. There was one point where he tried to do a really quick pass out to the winger and it went astray. But the one I want to highlight is the try that Alex Seyfarth scored. And it showed a few things for me. Lachie Galvin, when that ball was played, was on the opposite side of the field. Now, he was the player that was coming around behind the back, behind Seyfarth, who looked like he was the man who was going to get the ball. Manly, he was obviously all over Manly's tip sheet, because as soon as he came around the back, all eyes went straight to him.
Brooks went straight to him.
And if you have a look at the replay again, their centre's also starting to jam him again. And the way Leichhardt Fainu sold that play, the way his eyes were on Lachie Galvin, and as Seyfarth hit that gap, that short ball he threw without even looking, it was just a class piece of football that I haven't seen from our season playmakers in a number of years. And the fact that it was our two young guys, it was Lachie Galvin pulling the attention away because of the form he's shown all year. And then it was Leichhardt Fainu, who's really had an up and down season, hasn't had a lot of game time. The way he executed it and isolated those defenders because of how he threw defenders off with his eyes, that was just an amazing play. And I think for me, that shows the development in this side's attacking skills. that for me was such an impressive play, and I was so pleased to see that ball from Leichhardt Fainu last night.
There is the potentiality that we're putting the cart a little bit before the horse. There is the potentiality of having a side that has multiple attacking threats in the spine next year. Like how good was Appy with his try? You had Luai in there, Galvin with another off season, Fainu fully fit, the fullback. I mean, that's you're starting to look at a team that can score some points, Steve.
Yeah, I want to mention that Appy try, Joel, and it sort of tags on to Gary's point about growth and development, right? Like that was a great try from Appy, and at face value you say great work, Appy, but it wasn't Appy's try. That was Pole's try. Pole's straight. He ran straight at the defence, right? He made post contact meters. He was down and up within second. Quick play the ball, which gave Appy the time to then do what Appy does best, and that's the other aspect about Benji Marshall and the coaching is it's not just Lachlan Galvin, who you would imagine will improve having one of the best 5'8" in the history of the game as his coach, but you see in blokes like Pole, both the Fainus in the forward pack, and I'd even say, even though there's a lot of argument about his brain explosions, I'd also say Seafarth that are developing their game under Benji, and it is starting to show at the back end of the year. I'm not going to say Toll, because Toll's had a pretty average year, but even
he was better last night.
Yeah, the last 2 weeks he's been, and I noticed. I will mention I noticed he's starting to get a bit of a passing game going as well, which he has never had before.
Well,
so
Toll, that safe half try, Toll was the link man to Leichhardt Fainu in that try as well. So he was the forward that threw that ball out to Latu as well.
It was an interesting experience watching the game, because after 15 minutes I'd actually written my one word, and my one word was one. And the context being only one to go. Thank God, only one to go. One of these games to go. But at the 60th minute or thereabouts, I had a new word, and it was a word that a couple of other people had on their one-word submissions, and that was smiles. And I'm not talking about the players. What the highlight of the night for me was some of the footage of the fans in the crowd that actually genuinely had smiles on their face, and that was just so good to see, because we've suffered and we've struggled, and it was just so good to see them enjoying themselves, which was fantastic. Declan, when you are away, you tend to, it's different. I know especially if you're in a different time, in a different hemisphere, and all of that. I wanted to ask you the question: you haven't probably been watching the team as closely as we have, but from the time you went away, a month or so, 6 weeks ago to now, like what do you see different, having that different perspective, having been a little bit away, stepped away from it?
I think that coming back, I've seen the intensity that we saw at the beginning of the year. That they kind of replicated that with the South Sydney and the Manly game, because at the start of the year we scrambled really, really well, and we managed to get wins on the back of the defence. I think what Steve said, our attack has improved, but they still had that intensity against the Bunnies and Manly. In fact, I think against South, I think that's probably all we had, and just being able to scramble and scrap, that's how we managed to win that game. But the good thing about this Manly game was we had that, but then we also had the attacking flair as well, and a little bit more of the kind of highlight reel stuff as well, just to show that we are building. But yeah, I think Lachlan Galvin, I think he's just been playing like that from what I've seen of him all year. He's just on the ball all the time. He's just busy. He wants the ball. He's very fearless in his decision making. He ran the ball a few times on the last, and although it didn't always come off for him, I think that's really good in terms of confidence and seeing the game. And then I thought that Heath Mason made a huge difference playing fullback. Obviously, I'm not like Eddie. I'm not a hater of Dream Bulla. I think he's a good player as well. But I just think having someone like Mason, who when he comes off the kick returns, he does struggle under the high ball, that's for sure. But for his kick returns, he always finds his feet, which I think is really important to start a set. He always gets a relatively quick play of the ball. And then we just have another playmaker on that right side as well. And I think he's kind of made a bit of a difference. And then he's also kind of got the speed and acceleration to score a try like he did in the first half yesterday. So we look a little bit more multi-dimensional with him at fullback. And he obviously kind of knows Galvin's game inside out as well because they've come up the grades together. So I've been really impressed with him. I think he's made a big difference coming in to first grade. And then I think Pole, like besides that missed tackle on Bullymore, I thought he was exceptional in terms of attack. And I think it was just the intensity from everyone the entire way through is the biggest difference I saw from when I left the country a few months ago.
I think it's really good that Mason's had a really strong end of the year. I sat with Nick at the game last night, and he actually spoke to Dream Buller last night. And Dream Buller's got 6 months before he's back at full contact work. So Heath Mason's going to get a really good shot in that role over this off-season because 6 months from now is about February. So it doesn't look like Buller's going to be back to full contact until around February next year. And when talking about Galvin and his fearlessness, I watched the Hall of Fame inductions the other night, and I watched Benji get inducted into the Hall of Fame. And I think there was something really telling in something he said during his speech. He spoke about how lucky he was to have a coach like Tim Sheens who allowed him to play the way that he played. That growing up, he was told that he couldn't do the step that he did because it looked stupid and it wouldn't work. And he said that Tim Sheens allowed him to play the way that he wanted to play when most coaches wouldn't have. And I think that's the big thing a guy like Lockie Galvin's probably getting from Benji Marshall, is that freedom to go out on the field. And Benji always said, I'm allowed to try anything as long as I do it at training. I'm sure Lockie Galvin's kind of getting that same message and being told you don't have to be scared of making a mistake, that when you make a mistake, that's going to happen. You just go out and you keep firing your shots. And we saw that's how Benji always played. But I think that's a great mindset for a young guy like Lockie Galvin to have.
Yeah, and he's just so impressive that when Aiden Caesar went off with that shoulder injury, I wasn't worried. Yeah, I wasn't worried at all because you just know that he's just going to take the ball. He's going to get us to the points of the field where we need to be. He's going to finish off our sets, and he's not going to have any great explosions. And that's just so rare for a 19-year-old to do. I think we're seeing the start of something special with this guy's career.
So Eddie was right in that he's going to be a superstar, I think. So I'll give Eddie credit on that one. I don't give him credit too often.
Where is Eddie? I always ask that question when he's not here because I would really love to know, but that's a mystery. That's something that
Eddie is a mystery.
Eddie is a mystery wrapped in a riddle. Exactly.
Joel, I think he's out at Manly trying to find Luke Brooks. There's a few things he wanted to say to him.
He followed him home, doing him the whole way.
Like he was trying to say him to me on the last pod, apparently. Yeah.
Speaking of Manly players, I've seen Andrew Johns, I've seen Cliff Lyons, I've seen these guys, and we're not going to, go, just because we're on the topic of fullbacks. I don't want to come back to Mason, but I've seen guys that every time they get the ball, you just are terrified. And Tom Trbojevic is just so much that. He's just freakishly, unbelievably good, Gary.
Mate, I thought he was coming to get us last night.
Yeah.
Now, you have a look at him. He's not the player he was 3-4 years ago. He's obviously, his body, I think, is starting to let him down a little bit. But when he goes, there's just no one like him still in the game. The second try he scored, where just one out from the ruck, just took the defensive line on and barreled over the top of people. He set up the second try in their comeback as well. They bombed another try where he made space and they dropped the ball over the sideline, and then he dropped one himself. We were lucky to get away with that last night, and I really thought Tommy Trbojevic was coming to get us, because when he switches and he just puts the go button on, I still don't think there's a play I don't think there's a play that can keep up with him. It's just amazing to watch. But he obviously isn't the player he was a couple of years ago due to injuries, which is a bit sad to see.
He's the most awkward-looking thing, but he's so effective. Yeah, Steve.
Yeah, amazing.
But there's an interesting point to come out of that discussion, and it was Trbojevic last night, but it was South the week before. Like we're waxing lyrical about how well we've played. We've been starved of success, so any win's a good win, and we can't take anything away from it. But gee, I tell you what, it's still frustrating to watch us get a lead with 15 to go and just absolutely look like deers in the headlights, and we've been doing it for so long as a club, and not the same players, right? Like, we used to bag Brooks about it, and rightly so, and he's gone, and he was the same last night, right? But we blamed him. Now we've got different players, and we're still doing it. Like, we have this chronic inability to protect a lead and just nurse a game home to the finish line. Now, I know we won 2 games, but I tell you what, if Saab took that ball, we wouldn't be here saying that. So it's something we've got to work on, but it's just been around for such a long time.
The last 2 weeks for me, it's looked fitness. To me, towards the end of that game last night, we looked out on our feet, which is an unusual thing to say when for 30 minutes of that game we're playing against 12 men. So I think we've got to have a look at some of the strength and conditioning work we're doing over this off-season, because, last night looked to me that there was a bit of a fitness problem going into the back end of that game.
I think sorry, mate, you go.
I think also we had to make a reshuffle with Alomalo going, and then Sam Fainu had to play was it left edge for us, and that's down that right side for like Turbo, Jason Saab. So that's kind of their bread and butter. So you could just tell as soon as you had that back rower playing centre, that was always going to be their game plan. And I think they actually got a lot of success from that. And you're right, Steve. They probably, if a few balls went to hand, they probably would have won. But I think that's just like a really tough assignment for such a young team, especially Sam Fainu. Like he did, they did score a try down that end, but I thought, even though like we did kind of let them back into it, like I thought that the team as a whole did like do reasonably well to adjust to that change.
Yeah, my great hope with that is because I think it's like I don't necessarily I'm not discounting what Gary said about fitness. I'm not discounting what you're saying either, Declan. I think you're both right, but I still think it's a mindset problem, and it's something that's been around for a long time. My great hope with it is, with a bloke like Jerome Luai coming, who is bullish and is fairly headstrong and very confident in his own abilities and demanding. Yeah. I think he might change that mindset a little bit. I think he might grab the game by the scruff of the neck and say, right, we're kicking into the corners, we're going to fast line speed, keep them in their end and win this game, because we definitely lose our way mentally in those last 15 minutes of games when we're ahead.
Which comes back to that earlier point that I made about the importance of these couple of wins to get the confidence up, because it's an interesting psychological study to see Luai come into this team, a guy coming from potentially, well, definitely one of the top 4 teams, maybe the top team with 3 or 4 premierships, premiership rings, and coming into a team that's starting to be established with these youngsters in the spine, and then inserting Luai, and it's going to be really, really interesting. You would assume, and Luai having that connection with Appy, and you would assume that Luai will be the captain. It's going to be really, really interesting to watch how that dynamic kind of works. Fascinating. Going to be really fascinating to see what Luai does and how he does it with these guys and how they all interact with each other. Declan?
Yeah, I wasn't here when all that talk about Luai being captain was discussed, but like considering that he's going to be playing for Samoa at the end of the year against England in that 3-game test series, so he won't be back pre-season until like after the new year, as opposed to Appy, who's going to be there the whole time. And like I thought, Appy's just been incredible as captain for me. Like, do you guys agree that you think Luai should be the captain?
I actually think that Appy could do with a little bit of the pressure taken off. The last month of football, it's looked like he's been carrying the world on his shoulders. You've seen him in press conferences after the games where the guys just look so dejected. Now, no matter what, he's going to be one of the leaders of your side. But I think he wouldn't mind, and I think it wouldn't be a bad idea if just some of that pressure was taken off him a little bit, because as captain, I think he takes responsibility for everything. I think, like, you see him out on the field, and even last night, I do think he picked up an injured shoulder last night, but he was carrying it for about half an hour out on the field, and I don't think in that situation there's any way you get him off the field. So if you can relieve a little bit of the pressure on him, I think you get a better footballer. And that's the only reason why I'd be looking anywhere else. I think he's done a wonderful job. I think he's held his side together so well. And I don't see it as a demotion for him. I just think it's to take a little bit of that pressure away from him. And I think that's just better for the last couple of years of his career.
And not going back to the 5-captain plan, but my honest take on it is I'd make them co-captains.
I've got no issue with that at all.
I think you've got to have Luai there in some capacity as the leader of the club. So, yeah, I'm happy with that. He's your marquee man, and we want to sort of get as much out of him and give him as much, hand him the keys as much as possible, I think.
Yeah, milk that lemon dry.
Exactly.
Milk it. You don't milk a lemon.
A long way around to mix. Who mixes metaphors on the pod? Eddie does, doesn't he? He did a wonderful.
Yeah, that one was a bad one. Milk a lemon.
Yeah. Coming back around to fullbacks, I know we've spoken a fair bit about fullbacks, and look, Mason had a dodgy start to the game, screwed up a couple of things, definitely. But when he's got the ball, and I'm comparing and contrasting with the Manly fullback, I think if you're a Manly fan, you get a little bit nervous. That he seemed to be a constant threat with ball in hand. And I'm not picking on Buller. Buller's got his own strengths, but very different in that regard. Buller's good when he chimes into the back line, and there's that part of his game that's effective. But Heath Mason just seemed to be a little bit massive, comparison, definitely. But we all know when Tedesco got the ball, we all had that sort of thought, what can happen? He's dancing around, he's jigging around, and I saw some aspects of that in Heath Mason. I'm not saying he's the next Teddy, but I'm saying I like that. It offered a little bit more of that variety and that potential spark, maybe, than Buller does add to our offence. So we'll see what happens with the fullback role next year. We spoke about finding a place for Fainu. I suggested on the forum potentially centre, maybe. I mean, Buller potentially on the wing, maybe. I don't know. But I think, or as coming back to what Steve said, I'm of that same belief. Pick the best 17 and then work out where they play, and you can move them around in a game. Steve, I think you had your finger up, and then we'll go to Declan.
Yeah, it's very early in Heath Mason's career, and we need to see more of him. But from what Gary was saying, it sounds like we are, at the beginning of next year. So he's going to get a run at it. What I have seen, he's a bit sus under the high ball, but I like his positional play. He seems to be better actually than Buller with his awareness of where the ball's coming from going from defence into attack. So I wouldn't mind actually seeing a little bit more of him at fullback and them fighting it out. If it was determined that he was the better fullback, there's a big if, right? But if it was determined, I'd actually like to see Dream Buller get a shot at centre. I think he'd be a better centre than a winger, if that was in fact the way it transpired.
Well, yeah, I was just going to say exactly that, Steve. I think that all the great things that Buller does from fullback, he could do at centre. Like that try he scored against Newcastle where he jumped over Kalen Ponga. That's something that he could do from centre. And he's also very good at kind of getting his arms free when he's given that last final pass for a try to the winger. So he could easily do that from centre as well. And the thing about Mason as well is that his acceleration is probably, getting to top speed is probably a lot better than Buller's, which I think makes a big difference with creating half opportunities. And he's also got better footwork, because we saw that when he made that break, which led to Olakwadu getting sin bin, that little step. And that kind of just that little break just, kind of threw the game, a bit into mayhem for Manly, but good for us. And that little bit of talent and spark, I think, is something that, Buller, while there's things that, he can do that Mason probably can't, I think that, there's no doubt that Mason's got a lot of X factor going for him as well.
Yeah, they're two very different style of fullbacks. Buller is the guy that comes in on your sweep plays, out the back of those sweep plays, and Mason did do it last night, but Mason plays a lot more through the middle, a lot more support play. He's much more of a runner of the ball than Buller is. Buller kind of plays as that second 5'8", that that ball playing option at fullback where Mason is more the runner. If you're getting both of them into the side, I think the only position Mason can play is probably that fullback role. He could probably play in the halves, but we're very well covered in the halves. So having a look at the makeup of our side next year, if you're trying to get them both in the side, I think it's Mason at fullback and Buller probably out in the centres. But it'll be very interesting to see. It's a shame that Buller's going to be injured during this preseason, because it'd be really interesting to see during the trials next year them both kind of fighting out for that position. But we're probably not going to get that opportunity.
And Mason as well is very comfortable as a playmaker on that right edge. I remember against South Sydney, he threw like a two-person cutout pass to Charlie Staines, and it didn't really amount to anything, but he didn't really hesitate to send that ball. And Buller's probably not the strongest playmaker at this point in his career. And then Mason also is comfortable putting in a kick as well that led to a goal line dropout against South. So he does have those extra kind of strengths to his bow as well, where he's not afraid to put a kick in, and that just makes a big difference for our attack as well. We have another kicking option, another passing option in the back line, especially on that right side as well, because most of our kind of damage is coming from the left with Galvin, so we need to find ways to be just as effective on the right side as well.
A couple of other guys in the back line, I've got to say, I probably labelled Fatape as potentially not NRL standard, but I thought he had his moments in that game, and Alamalo too. A couple of decent plays. Neither of them you would say, let's sign them up for 10-year contracts, but maybe they certainly had better games than I thought maybe their potential, Gary.
Attacking wise, I thought they were okay. Defensively, especially earlier in that game, that they were quite poor. And that's probably going to be the issue moving forward. The ease that Manly stripped us for numbers for two of those first three tries was really concerning. It looked like it was a training run. And yes, the middle kind of gave way, but that try down that right edge, down for Tape and Alamalo's edge, they were backing back across the try line as they were scoring. So their errors, their defensive structures that you just can't do as an NRL standard player. And so while their attack, I think, was passable last night, defensively, I don't think their defence was NRL standard.
I think it's probably demonstrating that we are growing as a club, because blokes like those two are getting regular starts in our 17, whereas next year they're not going to come near the 17 when everyone's injury-free. I think they're going to be in the squad as depth players and possibly coming in for injuries or suspensions. And when they have to do that, they are capable of doing a job somewhat. I agree that defensively that's a real worry at this point, but I think some of that is system and as well as individual. So I think that's probably a good sign for us that we have got players of that standard that aren't going to be in our top 17, but we're all saying, at a pinch they could hang in there. That's good, because up until now they're in the 17 most weeks.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. And they're getting a little bit of experience if they do have to be called on at some stage again in the future, if they're still part of the club. Very interesting or very weird having the bye in the second last round, isn't it? Like, we've come off 2 wins, played on the Thursday night, and then we've got we've got the bye. Regardless of whether the wooden spoon is on the line against Parramatta, it would be a strange phenomenon for the players to try and get up for that last game. What do you think about that, Gary? I mean, whether or not there is something which is sort of arguable on the line or not, it's certainly a weird way to end the season.
It's a real test for me. It's a test for the coaching staff, and it's probably a test for the senior leaders of this club. The really tempting thing to do right now, as a player of a side that's down the bottom of the table, is basically view it as your off-season starting now. You've got I'm sure they're going to give the players some time off. Well, they have in the past. Every time we've had a bye, they get like 3-4 days off. Keeping these guys switched on when the season's kind of over, We've got one game to go after a bye. I think that's going to be really, really difficult. I think it's really important we do stay switched on, because if we get to that game against Parramatta and that's for the wooden spoon, I think it's a huge game for this club. I think it's a huge thing for this club to not be a team that wins 3 wooden spoons in a row. I think that's actually a massive game. Probably one of the bigger games we've actually had in quite a while for the club. I know it doesn't really mean much finishing last or second last, but I don't want to be a team that's won 3 wooden spoons in a row, and I hope the club doesn't want to be a club that's won 3 wooden spoons in a row.
Yeah, it's a bit frustrating because this season, you know, had a bye at the very start of the season and then a bye at the very end of the season. So I don't really feel like we've been given a fair shout in terms of spreading them out in a way that's kind of strategically beneficial for our season. But I don't know, it could kind of go either way, doesn't it? Because you talk about finals teams and they always say the week off is great. But I feel like with us, we do tend to lose a rhythm and intensity when we do have that week off. So it's going to be really interesting to see how we face up against Parramatta with the week off, while they're kind of just going in with rhythm and, judging by this Broncos game, a little bit of form as well. So, yeah, hopefully, fingers crossed, it goes well for us.
I wonder what they're going to do with, just getting slightly off topic, but bringing more teams in. You can't have a season this long without having the buys in this. I don't know how they're going to structure that necessarily, but the season just seems so much longer than it used to. We're going to be playing in September. Who says the West Tigers never play in September? We're going to be playing in September in a fortnight, but I'm sure they'll work that out. Jack Bird, just quickly on the way out. Looks like Jack Bird may potentially be coming to the West Tigers. Those reports were pretty adamant that it was a good chance. My prediction, as I put out there, was that he would play on an edge in the second row. Anybody
for 3 games in the season?
Got any interest in Jack Bird? Garry Watson's saying no.
Yeah,
I wouldn't mind if he's on the right dollars. I'd take him. We need some experience. My head went straight to centre. I've been off with the fairies, mate. So, but you're 100% right, Joel. If he comes here, he'll be in the back row. He won't be in the centres. And I think with our young forwards that are going to be, in our top 17 next year, he wouldn't be a bad acquisition if he's not coming over on huge dollars, because there is a huge risk factor. I would much, and I know I haven't been on the pods, but I've been listening to them. I would much prefer Corey Horsburgh. I reckon he would be a fantastic acquisition for us, even though he's a risk because he's a bit crazy.
Yeah, my issue with Bird is it feels like forever that he's been in and out of being injured. It feels like years that he's had issues, and he's got arthritis issues. And for me, I think this season we've been burnt by the Olam signing, a guy who came here with injury issues and really struggled to stay on the field for more than a game at a time. And it makes me even a little bit more gun-shy on a guy like Bird. I think he's a wonderful footballer and has been a wonderful footballer throughout his career. But just the injuries surrounding him over the last few years really concern me.
You could probably add in something that's maybe a little bit more of a concern, is that Flanagan won a premiership with him at Cronulla and now isn't all that keen on keeping him. You think that they've worked together and been together a long time, that may be a sign that Flanagan knows something that we don't, Declan.
Yeah, I just think, if you play him in the back row, I think the games kind of pass them by a little bit, because you see, all the good teams, they have, kind of big, strong, robust second rowers who can break tackles, and he's not really that. And then, Senna is, really quick, strong, and powerful. He's not really that either. He's that skillful kind of player that's, smart and tactical and makes up for that with it, even though he does have a lack of athleticism. So I'm just not sure, where he would fit in our team, unless he's replacing someone that's leaving that we don't know yet.
John Bateman, maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah. Look, Corey Horsburgh didn't sound too confident, Steve, in that last newspaper report where the manager was quoted as saying, we'll meet with the West Tigers just as a matter of courtesy. I thought that's a funny thing to say. It didn't fill me with a lot of hope that Corey's coming our way.
You're right, Joel. It's a really strange thing to say because if he's fair income about a possibility, then he's just put everyone off. But even if he's not fair income, but trying to get his value up by saying that he's in demand, it doesn't help him in that way either. So it was an off the cuff remark that may not have been all that smart. But I agree with you. It sounds like it's more hope than anything else. But I would like him to be at the club.
There's also been something that I was reading about Regan Campbell-Gillard, who apparently knocked us back, but he's getting rejected because he wants 3 years and nobody's willing to give him 3 years. So that's another interesting scenario and situation. We'll have to wait and see. One thing I will say, the appointment of Scott Fulton came with a whole lot of drama and headaches and bad headlines and all that sort of stuff. But we did get the Fainus out of it, which is something that should be noted, that we sort of, I guess, dumb-lucked it, but that was one contribution that he may have made to the club which could have long-lasting effects. I'd like to see all three of those stay at the club, all three brothers, and further develop their games, because I think they've all got improvement still in them, Steve.
Joel, it has been noted, Buzz Rothfield couldn't get pen to paper quick enough to make mention of the great work Scott Fulton did in bringing the Fainus to the Tigers. So, yeah. Well, Buzz hasn't let you down. Yeah,
but Buzz is a dribbler, but it's still factual, and it's still worth pointing out that that was probably the factor that got them here, and they could be West Tigers for a long time, and hopefully successful West Tigers for a long time. All right, well, the West Tigers podcast is a little bit lost now because we played on Thursday, recorded on Friday. That means there's not going to be a Sunday pod, and heaven only knows where Eddie's going to be for a midweek pod next week, given that it's a bye week. So
yeah, it's a bye. Eddie's like the players; he'll be off partying all week.
He will be. Yes. We'll have to wait and see. There's no locked in schedule of when the next edition of the West Tigers podcast will drop. You just have to wait and see. Gary, you may get a chance of getting Jordan on at some stage in the next 2 weeks because his 3 in a row is still alive.
No, I spoke to Jordan about this last night, and I think 3 consecutive wins has to be 3 rounds in a row. So it won't be 3 rounds in a row.
That's harsh.
Declan.
No. Yeah. Jordan can't be right, so they are the rules.
No, Gary, there are situations in this world where other people, apart from yourself, are allowed to have the limelight. Give the guy some credit.
No, there are other situations where that is true.
Thank you. All right.
But I've only ever seen it once before.
Thanks, Joel. Thanks, everyone.
We could test your theory about 3 consecutive wins with a bye in the middle, Gary, in the Supreme Court. I don't think you're going to win that one. I think 3 successes. You can only have consecutive wins when you play the game. So, but we'll see what happens. Thank you, guys. We'll
have to get Jordan on and ask you.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
Cheers, guys.
Thank you.